All right, what is up? We are here with the Geek Chic, episode 2 for y'all enjoyment. Yo, I am Black, of course, but I'm AB, that's also called Black. What's up, fellas? What's up, fam? What's up, the internet world? We're here for Geek Chic 2. I'm here with my brothers, just about to lay it down this week for y'all. What are we going to talk about? Whatever comes to mind. Like, again, Geek Chic is about a movement. It's about how we represent ourselves in both the geek culture and the chic culture. But it all comes together. We're all one and the same. So I want to introduce my brothers and let them kind of say who they are, and then we'll get into it for this week. Let's run it down the line. Who's next?
Richard, start, Rich.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Rich, coming at you live from the LI. Everyone's having a good, solid weekend.
Yeah, all right. This is the one, the only, Rob Boogie, Rod getting it popping. Y'all know how we do it now. Rashawn, I'm here with my brothers having fun. And for people who maybe watched the first one but haven't seen or maybe even caught some of our pre-production work, we have our other brother on right now, coming from the nation's capital, so to speak. My boy George. So George, introduce yourself, bro.
All right, G Brooks here. As Don knows from a previous lifetime, Dr. Midnight from DMV.
Yeah.
And my rookie introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Better get his rookie card now. Better get his rookie card now, because after the price ain't going down.
Exactly.
Right? That's what I'm talking about.
Well,
That's what we also call Dennis Edwards. That's what we call him on the low, though.
Right there. The late great Dennis Edwards.
Don't look any further.
Don't look any further, Dennis.
Let me get my little move on over here. Don't make me get my little move on. I get it popping real quick.
What's up? I can't wait until I heard some rumors, fellas. We about to get Ruffin back.
We not get y'all.
We about to get Ruffin back, kid. All right, let's jump into it.
Just to let everybody know, y'all will know who Ruffin is when he comes back, but we will keep that as a surprise for a future show. But you know what? We do have our rookie brother on right now. And for him, who's just a wealth of knowledge, I'd like to pass on to him to kind of get us started. In particular, with the topic he's near and dear to his heart. So, my brother George, you get us started with this real quick.
We'll start with the Panther.
Who Panther?
Wakanda forever, baby.
There you go.
1.2 million and counting. Have enough fighting chance at reaching number 1 for the 6th consecutive week, which hasn't been done. Well, the last time was 5 straight weeks was Avatar. So we're talking about almost 18, 19 years. And, it's moved beyond movie to movement, and to a level I don't think anybody anticipated, including even Wall Street. Forbes had a very interesting article saying Panther was too good for its own good. And I had to shake my head at that one. Forbes is a bastion of free enterprise and capitalism, right? So what happens in capitalistic society? You perform well, you do well. You don't, you get eaten. And
you bring up a very interesting point, is that it is now, number one, I think we said this before in a different chat room, is that this is long ago left from being a movie to a movement. And I think the Forbes article, while bringing up some interesting points that I can also say were more race stereotypical, because when you start wondering why is it bad for this movie to be so good and to be holding on to the top spot versus
go into that Forbes article. Go into what they actually said in the article.
Yeah, let's go into that.
Well, short version is that Forbes pointed out that Black Panther is a tentpole movie, but simply put, they didn't expect it to be this powerful, and it was so powerful that several other movies that were supposed to be competitors have gotten slaughtered. Pacific Rim, to a lesser extent, Wrinkle in Time. There's a couple other movies, the reboot of Tomb Raider, right? Now, leaving aside the fact that Black Panther was launched in February, which I had a problem with initially because February is where movies go to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of the strategy was, let's release these other movies, build up some nice momentum in February and early March, and we can outperform expectations. but then Black Panther turned into an absolute monster that has overperformed domestically. 605 million last I checked.
Actually, I'll even update you. Going into Friday, it was actually at 620 million, and it was only 2.3 million off from overtaking the Avengers, which it will do by the end of this weekend.
Right, and interesting thing about it is that there was an article a guy wrote in Forbes. It was a preemptive article, which was normally blockbuster movies. Excuse me, their breakdown is 35-65. 35% of the money they make globally is in the U.S. The rest is overseas. Black Panther is more like 60-40. But the gist of the article was, look, a 40 is like 450 million, which most people would kill for. Don't hate on Panther because it overperformed in the U.S. As I'm sure we all know anecdotally, how many of us have seen this movie 2, 3, 4 times?
Right.
Folks who never watched a comic movie in their life showing up.
Well, go into what you just said. What makes this movie very interesting in using the 60-40 split. It's actually as of Friday going on, and we're doing this show on a Sunday at the end of the weekend. As of Friday, it was exactly 50-50. It was at 1.2 billion. I mean, when I say exactly, we're giving the point here and there. It was at 1.2 billion. 620 was from the United States. The remaining 580, 590 was overseas. So we're talking about
which begs to the point I wanted to dive into a little bit. What about that whole controversy in China about the Chinese saying
it was too black?
It was too black. They came into the theater.
Y'all. And I'm black, y'all. And
I'm blackity, biggity, black.
Too biggity black.
It was too biggity black. It
was hard for them to focus on the screen. The movie theater was too dark to show an all black cast, which is one of the things that somebody actually said, because it was to watch an all black cast in the movie, it was a little too dark. This is actually quotes coming out of China, which by the way still did big numbers, but I mean,
there are people who tell in China who tell the critics to kiss their butt too.
Yeah,
it's very one. I mean, if you think about China, though, I mean, they are a very monolithic kind of society, right?
Extremely.
And they're not that many foreigners there, so that's what they know, right? So
but you can even make the same argument about Japan. But one of the things about Japan, because it's not an Asian thing. But that's what I'm saying. Like with Japan, they are also monolithic in a xenophobic society, but they are always very adopting of different cultures, especially Black cultures, right? So whether it's hip hop and reggae, I mean, they are experts. Jazz, they are expert at certain other cultures to the extent you almost think they invented that, right? So it's interesting. You have two societies that are both xenophobic to a certain degree, right? Or are known to be xenophobic in terms of their policies, in terms of how they approach the world, but they might have had two different reactions to the movie that I just find is very interesting.
Well, going back real quick to what you just said, though, Japan and the Japanese are much more xenophobic when it comes to other Asians.
That's true.
They're a little bit more open historically with outside influence, whether you're talking about British colonies, European colonies, and even with people of color, meaning Black people. They've been much more open with that. I'm not calling them like the Rainbow Coalition country or nothing like that, but if you could compare China's communist regime and their very monolithic state and mindset versus Japan, where they want to do they want you to do movies in Japan. They want you to come there and do Tokyo Drift and crazy things like that. Go ahead, Rich.
A lot of that goes back to the differences in China and Japan and what happened during the Second World War and before.
Exactly.
A lot of that history that's just compelled and.
But how does that translate to today with Black Panther though? Like how would what happened in the Second World War translate to the fact that they everyone else has a Rotten Tomato score of 97, and then
because
China gives it a 67, right? Like how does that translate? I mean,
this is just my view, but I mean, what happened in Japan with the whole bombing and everything else at the end of the war? Japan was forced to start over to a certain degree, right? A lot of the beliefs they held to with respect to approaching the world they reevaluated and came with a different path, which is how they built up their economy, right? The U.S. helped them rebuild their economy, and they became a super economy in that regard. China, on the other hand, after World War II, they closed off again.
Right.
Very much
because they were so, well, I mean,
and America
by the Japanese, they really shut down their borders again, and they remained closed for many years.
And the Western nation, I'll point out two things. One, the West, you're absolutely right. The Western nations were kind of happy to see China closed off. I mean, I remember as a kid asking my dad after watching the news, what is Red China? And he's like, because I kept a map in my bedroom, right? He's like, that's China. It's like, there's no red on it. He's like, don't listen to him, man. That's China, right? Then he explained Taiwan to me. I'm like 10 years old. So this is mid-70s.
The power of China, right? It's that power of China. I guess part of what I want to get back into, and so part of it's Chinese, because part of that was also being reported as perhaps fake news to a certain degree as well. Yeah. So I want to play both sides of the coin, because
let me throw this at you, man.
Yeah, because there's a notion that, well, yeah, they gave Black Panther and they said all those things about the cinematography. It really wasn't about the people. Like, they felt like the movie was just dark cinematography in general. And perhaps I remember two Chinese writers I think it was either in Quartz magazine, two different articles saying two opposing viewpoints, right? And the second viewpoint was, so the first one was what we just talked about. The second viewpoint was, well, they give all of those movies pretty low scores. They gave the Avengers, excuse me, they give the Avengers pretty low scores, and then they gave Black Panther pretty low scores. So I don't know. It just seemed very different.
I think. Well, consider this. Two things I was going to point out real fast. One, the Chinese movie industry is blowing up. They've got their own movies that are just making ridiculous dollars. And keep in mind, you're talking about over 1 billion people. So if they get the same percentage of box office dollars going for movie X that we do for movie Y, their gross is going to be absolutely obscene. But number two, and this is the one that I really thought about a lot after somebody said it, Don, and same thing with you guys. China and Japan both felt the legacy of white supremacy. You would think that Black Panther would be a somewhat empowering movie. It would take a leap. But I do know that when it comes to cultures like that, it's always been mind-boggling to me with China, with Japan, with India. If you're not celebrating your ethnic group, that particular, your home group, you go with the white people. So, Black people in a position of empowerment, China buys into the same stereotypes, even though they invest heavily into the African continent in helping build infrastructure, right? Japan, the same way. When that movie came out.
Not to interrupt you there, though, but I would agree with what you're saying. I agree with the sentence you're saying. I do also at the same time want to point out that Black Panther hit $100 million in China.
Sure.
And also let's be fair, is that we're like Adon said, like Black Panther was getting 95% Rotten Tomato scores. They were still getting like 60-something%. So while the number was down, it's not roughly 2 out of 3 to 3 out of 5 people really enjoyed the movie. So
I just think that there's a serious adjustment culturally for Chinese, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think it's way overdue. On one hand, they see Black basketball players, right? The NBA is huge in China, right? So they see a LeBron, they see an MJ, they see these various players. The Houston Rockets, and this is what really woke me up to the potential of China. Years ago, I was talking to a guy at NBA.com, and he's like, more people watch an average Houston Rockets game, this is when they had Yao Ming, than Americans watch the Super Bowl. Every Rockets game was Super Bowl Sunday in China in terms of population, in terms of eyeballs on a set, and that just made me just sit straight up going, wow.
Well, in fairness to that, to even go into that point, and we talk, and we won't stay on that long. They have an actual statue before the Los Angeles Lakers did of Kobe Bryant. He's actually was voted the most famous, Chinese favorite athlete from 2009 to 2013, over LeBron, over everything else, and has an actual statue. And you can
Marbury.
But Marbury
Yeah,
does that.
Marbury should have his own museum.
I mean,
well, he has his own play.
I think they were bombarded with something that they'd never seen. It's a closed off. It is a closed off still country that we sometimes think is this open. They're not as open as Japan at all. This is not going to This is not going to Tokyo and stuff like that. Even if you're going to Beijing and all that type of stuff, it is still very much a closed society. But let's get back to the main point. Is that what I thought George was talking about a little bit was the effects of the movie, and that I still don't think that Hollywood has completely understood the power of not just the movement as we said it was, but also nobody's ever really taken into account the power of the black dollar, and it goes into not just this movie, but just an overall what we normally contribute to something. Because I laugh all the time. The highest paid athlete considerably in the world is Floyd Mayweather. Most of his money comes from black people getting together watching his fights because white people hate him. But it shows you the movement. I mean, then sometimes they do watch him. They pay for him too, but they pay him to see him get his ass kicked versus anything else. But what it goes back to is when you're talking particularly about the Black Panther movement, not movie, was that you had many people go for 2-3 times. I mean, I'm on number 3 seeing the movie. I think I'm barred out of going back to the movie to go see it. So there's been a movement. There's been a focus of the money that we can contribute to what we do. The interesting part of what I wanted to just say and leave it with, for my point, is that what does this mean for future movies that have a strong black cast, and are they going to promote it? Because once again, whether you like his movies or not, Tyler Perry is damn near a billionaire, and probably 3 white people have seen his movies.
Yeah.
True.
I think there's 4 now. I think
it might be 4. Might be 4 because Kim Kardashian wasn't one of his movies, so he might be up to 5.
But I think you hit on a point, because you're looking at the type of money that's spent. I also look at a guy like Ryan Coogler, who is supernova hot right now. He's, pun not intended, he's white hot, because he's directed 3 movies. All of them have been acclaimed. Fruitvale Station should have won an Oscar. Creed was, and I went to see it and was questioning myself for seeing a Rocky Balboa movie, and I was stunned at how good it was and how I got into it. And then now you have this phenomenon that we haven't seen truly, I believe, since Star Wars. And so he has an amazing amount of leverage, the type of leverage that Spike Lee could only dream about when he blew up on the scene, or Singleton. It'll be interesting to see what he does with it. And an Ava DuVernay, because for a couple of weeks they were 1 and 2 in the box office, which was a historic first as well. So I see a lot of leverage on their end in terms of bringing in people of color, bringing in more women behind the camera in the marketing campaigns, not just in front of the camera. And how do we use that, and how do we leverage that as well?
So what do you think about the economics? I mean, we're hitting $1 billion. Does anyone know how the economics translated?
As far as what you say,
to the actors, to the directors, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I haven't seen that. I mean, I would say from an economics point of view, it does give, to what George is getting at, MCU way more leverage to be a lot more creative in how they approach movies in the MCU universe, right? Because if this has been such a successful movie for them, it is
now their highest grossing movie as we speak today. It is now not one of them. It's not because they were given caveats. So it's the highest grossing single entity movie, meaning like 1 star. This highest grossing movie that didn't have an ensemble. It's the highest grossing movie. No asterisk next to it at all.
Well, the last caveat they're using is not adjusted for inflation. So we got another couple $100 million to go.
So what did Chapman make off the movie, though? I guess is my question.
I don't know.
With Chadwick?
Got points. Did he get points for the movie?
Exactly, is what I'm getting at.
Right.
I think I've heard something close to, I don't know, 5 million. I don't know. I've seen these numbers and I just can't. I don't know what it is, and it just keeps going at $1 billion.
When he signed on, he signed for points. What his points were, besides his initial, what his points were, I don't know. But
you know what was points? It wasn't a salary.
It wasn't just salary. He got points.
Oh my God!
And it's estimated. It's been talked about that he could walk away from this, especially where it now has gone, both him and Coogler should walk away. It's at 1.2 billion now. You talk about points for them of over 70 to 85 million dollars.
Yeah, because the previous benchmark, I think, would have been Sandra Bullock in Gravity, because Sandra took away 70 million for her role, and she didn't, and Gravity didn't make nearly what this movie made.
So here's a thought, and I think we're talking about this. What was fascinating to me about Black Panther in general, and why I think it worked as a movie, was this, because there was a lot of tropes, right? We talked about in our last episode, kind of the white gaze and how they turned it on its head. But one of the ones I think that kind of got lost in terms of the movie tropes or the movie paradigms is this concept called a MacGuffin. And this MacGuffin thing is typically it's a plot device, essentially. It's basically when you have some type.
Let's explain to some people who don't quite understand.
Yeah, that's what I'm going through. So I think what it is it's basically a goal or a desired object. Alfred Hitchcock used to refer to it as that plot device, or is that thing happening in a movie, right? That people, and usually most of the characters in the movie, care about, but the audience could care less about. That's how Alfred Hitchcock described it. But ultimately, it's that thing that people are chasing. So you think about in the rest of the MCU world is the Tesseract, right? What's coming up in Infinity Wars is the Infinity Stones, right? What was the MacGuffin? Two questions. Was there a MacGuffin in Black Panther? And if there was a MacGuffin, how did it play out in your minds?
The first MacGuffin to me would have been, there were several. The first one would have been the stolen vibranium in 1992, but that was quickly resolved and tossed. Then there was another potential, and I guess that's the word I'm looking for, another potential MacGuffin, which was the hidden vibranium in what they thought was a West African artifact that was stashed in the London Museum. And then, of course, they went to chase it down in Philippines, I believe. But again, that was pretty much taken care of. For me, ultimately, there was no physical MacGuffin, which was an interesting change. I mean, they threw a curveball or two at us early, and then you could say potentially you had a human MacGuffin.
I think it's a human MacGuffin that I have my saying on, but I'll let you finish. But I do. Yeah,
I thought Ulysses Claw could have been a human MacGuffin, but then he gets offed, which kind of surprised me. He Killmonger put a bullet in him. Oh, there's another one. So
yeah, I mean, he was actually a human MacGuffin. They actually took his physical body and dropped him in Wakanda.
Right. In a parachute case, like, here you go. Boom. So I didn't think there was one. And when you brought that up, that really intrigued me, because I'm thinking about it, and it was.
I honestly didn't think there was one.
What were you saying, Rich?
I honestly didn't think there was one. I mean, going back, looking at the plot, I mean, I suppose you could argue it was Claw for a little bit, but he got removed so quickly, he didn't really focus.
Well, that is the crux of what I was thinking about, is that do the better movies rely on MacGuffins, like how carefully you can manipulate the MacGuffin. So they're like, if you think about the movies like the Maltese Falcon, which is one of the ones that people really think about the MacGuffin, what they really did is, even though the movie is all about this Maltese Falcon, right? What they did is they really shifted everyone's focus less on the Maltese Falcon itself, but onto the movie, right? Onto the characters in the movie. The one that's the most interesting in MacGuffin is Star Wars, right?
R2-D2.
MacGuffin there.
R2-D2
R2-D2 is the MacGuffin. But the real MacGuffin is actually Princess Leia's plans, right? The plans she's sending to the Rebel Alliance, right? But we don't care about the plans. The MacGuffin. So what George Lucas did brilliantly, right? He took the plans of, which was stupid and nobody cares about. Like, people care about it, but you really won't build an emotional attachment to plans, right? What he did is he took the MacGuffin and he put it in this cute little robot, right? And he made the robot a shell of the MacGuffin. And you care about R2D2. You don't want him to get blown up. He makes these little cute little noises, right? And so you get all wrapped into it. And that MacGuffin stays the whole movie. So now you get Black Panther, right? Which you have these MacGuffins that come and go and come and go, and then there's
a stabilizing MacGuffin to me in Black Panther, and it's an obvious one. But it's not thought of if you take the totality of the movie, there is a MacGuffin. The MacGuffin is named Nakia. And the MacGuffin to me was what Nakia is that, let's go back to, remember in the movie where, hey, listen, movie's been out for 6 weeks, so there's gonna be spoiler alerts right now.
I think we already hit those.
Okay, so so just real quick, when they initially got Claw, and remember when they were talking, and Claw said, "What do you know about Wakanda?" And he's talking to Ross. Ross is, third world country, farmers, herders, everything else like that. We already was on the end by that point in the movie. We knew that they were a high, the most sophisticated, technology advanced country on planet Earth, period, or whatever like that. Who represented that more than anybody else throughout the whole movie was who I called the Black Panther R2D2. Was literally an 18-year-old girl who was smarter than everybody we've ever seen in MCU.
Oh, you said Nakia. You meant Shuri.
I mean Shuri. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. Shuri, who represented that. So my bad on that.
Yeah.
She was actually, to me, the R2D2, the 21st century R2D2 MacGuffin of this movie. Because in the sense that she like we said, we no longer at a point we cared more about how smart and how advanced this country was, and how Wakanda Forever, as we all do our thing, was so represented us, particularly as people of color, being so much more advanced and so much smarter than everybody else. She, to me, Shuri represented that. She was the representation of that. She was a 19-year-old girl who's infinitely smarter than anybody we know in any of the MCU movies we've seen so far. I mean, including Tony Starks and everything else like that. So kind of when you said the R2D2, where the plans, but we cared about what happened with R2D2. We cared that, Shuri remained the smartest person. That she was telling her brother, who was the star of the movie and the king, he was still, had to listen to her to a degree of being what I need to do next, whether it was the car chase, the new vibranium suit, whatever it may be. She was in my way.
Yeah.
The MacGuffin.
I'm gonna have to let that marinate a little bit, but I mean, you went real deep. You went real deep on that one.
Because I'm thinking maybe she was the Doe Ex Machina more than a MacGuffin. But
we went real deep on that. I think we're gonna have to get back to these MacGuffins again because I'm curious about it.
So I'm gonna shift topics and talk about something that's been in the news a lot lately. Our favorite friend Facebook, home of 2 billion users, maybe more than 2 billion at this point. God knows.
I'm surprised it's only 2 billion.
True that.
Well, it's probably only 2 billion because only so many people have necessary infrastructure to get on it, right? When you think about all the developing nations who don't have rapid enough internet services to allow you to get on Facebook.
Yeah. And I don't think any Martians are on it now, right? They're not on it yet.
Nah, they're probably on Instagram.
That's very. We did some dad jokes there. That was some geek jokes. That was really bad. It was really bad. About that.
No, I was just thinking. I did this myself, so I don't know if people have done it yet. But there's a lot of good articles. Berg and others have it about. If you've been an old Facebook hand, you probably got 100 or more apps sitting out there that you probably don't even use anymore. And those are the apps that siphon off your personal data and sell it to data miners.
Well, why do we care about this, Rich? Like, what's driving the fact that we care about this?
Well, I mean, everyday personal boundaries and privacy boundaries get eroded a little bit further as we continue to give the likes of Facebook, Google, pick your favorite tech company, ISPs, more and more data about yourself, right? The government has your data. They always will. They always need it, right? Social security numbers, et cetera. But a lot of people have given away personal data for convenience. And I think many don't really put much thought into what that really means, right? But if you think back, right, how many of you get spammed on your cell phone, your home phone with just random calls of God knows what? This is a cruise line. You've won this cruise, right? And you know it's a spam call. I mean, thank God my phone warns me that it's spam and it allows me to block it real quick. But they get all that data from all the stuff you share, right? Facebook, when you first log Messenger on your phone, if you do use Messenger, it does pointedly ask you if you use an Android phone, if you want to allow it to download your contacts, right?
Well, a lot of the part of this started with Cambridge Analytica, though, too, right?
Yeah, right. But the thing about Cambridge Analytica is they go all that. I mean, the way they got the data was questionable because the guy Keoghan gave them illegally. However, the way he collected his data was completely legit from a Facebook perspective, right? They allowed
let everybody know what happened with that, right? So what happened is during the 2016 presidential elections, right? Cambridge Analytica was been hired by the Trump campaign, and also I think even Ted Cruz to do some data mining of different social media applications. And so one of those was Facebook. And then what they did is they took publicly accessible information, but they the question is how reputable were they in terms of maintaining privacy policies in terms of how they did that. And one of the ways that they did that is they asked people to go through different surveys and on Facebook. And when you went through the surveys, you got certain questions, but you also said, I'm going to give you access to my friend's data. Right. And that's one of the things that the apps ask, right? That whether it's Cambridge Analytica asking that or any other apps. So even though Cambridge Analytica only maybe profile, I think maybe in the hundreds of thousands, they were able to get to millions of profiles because they're getting your friends.
One correction: it was a it wasn't Cambridge Analytica who accessed the data initially. It was a professor of psychoanalytics who did that small psych survey. He initially only profiled 50,000 people. No, or 50 or I think it was like
50,000. That sounds right.
But think about it. The average Facebook user, has 800 contacts, 800 connections or whatever like that. That's the average. So 50,000 times 800. I mean, immediately we're going. I mean, that's
how they got into the
public math now.
Of course, through Facebook's the 6 degrees of Facebook, these are a lot of people are going to be, retroed over. Like if they took all of our contacts between us four, but you still got to figure that's a ton of people. That's a ton of people just between us four that they've now have access to. I mean,
so now people are deleting their accounts, right? People are thinking about deleting their Facebook accounts.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's why they went from the small number initially pulled in that psych survey question that they put out there to getting 200 plus million people's data.
So what do we think about? I mean, what do you guys think about that? Deleting the Facebook account? Is it? I mean, and granted,
honestly,
because it's Facebook as well as Instagram, and you got to think you delete Instagram and WhatsApp too. They own that.
Facebook is just being used as a target of it, but like you said, it goes through Instagram. It goes as small as Yelp. When I was on Yelp, and it immediately wants to contact you through and connect you through. Say, hey, you want to use when you're signing up through Yelp, and like every time I've had a Yelp account for X number of years, and to this day, it always asks, can they connect through Facebook or Instagram?
Right.
I've done no every time, but they always ask me to do it. And, hoping that, just one day I'm going to slip up and say, sure, no problem. You have access to my contacts. But more importantly, so Facebook is being used kind of just as it's just a litmus test.
The poster child. It's the biggest one. So that's the one that people
they're going after that. But it's done everywhere. And my thing is, to be honest, I hate to be like the guy who's just, like, duh. Like, why was people surprised? I mean, I've noticed this thing for years when little things I can meet, if I didn't know George, I can meet George on a Saturday because he's connected through a Don. It'd be cool. What would be amazing is I can go into my LinkedIn and George would somehow, who had never popped up before, would then be, do you know this person? Do you want to connect?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm like, I just met him, but you know how they even knew that? Because when I took George's number and put it in my phone, he's now one of my contacts in my phone. It's one of those things that like, duh. I guess for me, it was just a duh moment. Like, we already know if you choose to be on anything, Facebook, whatever it was. This is going on. Period. Stop that being fake outrage when all these things are going on. Like you said, we get spammed for dumb things that don't even matter or whatever like that.
I think there's a tipping point where we are willing to tolerate a certain amount of Viagra ads, right? Hell, one or two of them might actually work, but not that I would know anything about it. But
you're all weak.
We need a disclaimer. Put one in later on.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's we can tolerate a certain amount of spam. Just like you used to get the junk mail flyers in your regular mail, right? Yeah. But then there comes a point where it's like you can't even have the courtesy to ask me permission. I mean, you may not respect me in the morning, but at least don't put your foot in my butt and shove me out of bed. And I think this was kind of a final straw type of thing that's been building for a while. I happen to agree with you. I've had 3 or 4 ex-girlfriends show up on my LinkedIn feed, and I'm trying to figure out why. Yeah. We haven't talked, and then the old email address that had been buried in my account bubbled up. So they did whatever magic they do, and voila, now I've got old contacts showing up.
Maybe they're stalking you 9 to 5 mess, George,
What's that?
Maybe they're stalking you like 9 to 5 or something. They may be plotting.
George, let's be real. Them ex-girlfriends found their way to your ass.
Exactly.
That wasn't an accident. Cambridge Analytical, but
I'm just glad they're making a living to be on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn's very ruthless when you're not getting paid, right?
Yeah, they let you know. But I guess the question I have is, so what should we do next, right? Honestly, this is a personal responsibility. This is Congress.
It's a government thing, right? If you look at how the EU treats privacy, and then you look at how the United States government treats privacy, right? EU has very rigid, very strong data protection laws, which is why they have the Google's now adhering to the Google Forget ruling that came out of the EU in France, where you can tell Google, I want you to delete all this old data from the internet and from search, and they will do it. Only if you live in the EU. If you're in the US, you're out of luck. But that's just it, right? In the US, we live under a model where everything is, you have to explicitly opt out. In the EU, you have to explicitly opt in for anything. All companies in the EU have to specifically ask you for permission to use your data. In the US, if it's out there, they'll just take it and run it. That's why all these data aggregators who hide behind Facebook apps, who hide behind LinkedIn, who hide behind anytime you do a survey for any company, take all your data, compile it, and then as data brokers turn around and sell it to whoever will pay the highest bid for it. And many times you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Many times they have incorrect data about you, but you can't change it.
I think we're so far in the matrix, is unfortunately now, where if you use anything, social media, regular emails, it's so tied in. It's crazy. This is a true story. This just happened a couple years ago. I get my tax return. I get a letter from the IRS. It was nothing big. They said they overpaid me by $100 or $150, literally, like whatever. So, it's no big thing. I get the letter. A week later, I'm getting emails in my personal emails. I haven't told nobody this because it's like such a small number. I just send them a check for the $150 that or whatever. I get emails from Lexington Law Credit Center saying, if you have tax problems, can you get? I'm like, I don't have tax problems. But somehow they knew.
Got the same thing.
They knew that that the government that year, I think like I said, it sent me a big check, and that then they came back and said, hey, we slightly overpaid you by $100 or whatever it is. Can you send it back, or we'll take it out the next year's whatever it is. I just paid them early, but it wasn't about that. It was more like without telling.
They're reading your email. Yeah, people are reading your email and then selling the data. Right?
Exactly.
So that's what you're getting at.
So
the question I have is, how effective would a taxpayer a cyber bill of rights for privacy really be? I mean, we should have had this 10 years ago, but that was when you mentioned that you're a conspiracy kook. You remember you were thinking off the deep end, and of course there was people going, well, our government wouldn't do anything like that. Yeah, right.
Well, it isn't just the government; it's the corporations, right?
It's mostly corporations.
So, with the Bill of Rights, would a Bill of Rights help protect us from corporations farming out our data?
I think the answer is yes, but the question is, if you think about what Rich just said, right? Rich just pointed out is that sometimes I think we get myopic of our view as U.S. citizens, and we only think
Mhm.
about. We don't think about. So, is your question is should it help, right? Or are we so far gone into the matrix of what it means to be a citizen in the United States that we
Right.
don't understand, how laws can be enacted to actually protect citizens? Because if outside of the United States they're doing it.
Correct.
But one of the things you mentioned, George, you talked about corporations, and I'll pick it off the point first. One of our favorite colonizers, Elon Musk, and I call him that because he's from South Africa and he's trying to colonize Mars. One of our favorite colonizers, he's jumped off of Facebook. So he's removed the Tesla accounts, and I think the SpaceX accounts off of Facebook.
Correct.
What do we? Is that the right move?
Very also nice of him to do it after he used it to promote and make several $1 billion of them. So his now quote unquote eye-opening experience to getting off Facebook is a little bit a preconceived knocking Facebook, which has been a big partner of his for years. So I have nothing against Elon Musk personally, but that was
like I said, he's a favorite. He's one of our favorite colonizers.
Yeah, exactly. We love Elon, but that part of that him doing that was like, oh, wait, really? Like we're going to fall for this? Like if I didn't even know why they printed that. That was
banana in a tailpipe.
You thought it was a publicity stunt, basically.
Yeah,
it was. To a certain degree, it was. I mean, I think he also got egged on by people on Twitter. It's like, so are you going to delete it? And since he responds to people on Twitter all the time, he did it. But technically speaking, then he should probably just delete his Twitter account too, right? But then how will he come?
Exactly. He ain't doing that. All right. Well, listen. I think we got it in this weekend. We can keep going on forever, but so we talked about a couple of things. We talked about Black Panther and the next steps. We talked about the concept of MacGuffins in general and how it applies to Black Panther and other movies. And we talked about this whole Facebook thing. I'll go around. Let's do quick parting words. Interesting, exciting times, man, and I can't wait for Infinity War. I'm curious what the next story is going to be, but I'm also, paying attention to some of these, the impact between tech and our government and our privacy. So that's something I'm monitored too. Rich, what's up?
Hey, good talking to everybody. As I started in that Facebook monologue, if you haven't gone in and looked at your old apps, go in and look at them and delete the ones that you don't want to use anymore or haven't used in God knows how long. And then log down your Facebook account, right? You can protect some of your privacy. I mean, it's
true.
One of those things you should just be proactive about. That's it for me.
George?
Oh, man. Distilling everything very briefly. I think off the top of my head, the Forbes article, coming back to that, it implied and caught a lot of backlash that, Black Panther was too successful and that it was cannibalizing other films, and to which I shrug my shoulders and say, capitalism for you, deal with it. Same way we have. Yeah. And, and then, the bookend Rich's comments, I echo them wholeheartedly, but it also indicates a mindset, which I'm equally guilty of at times, this resignation that the horse is out the barn, we're buried deep in the matrix, keep piling on the bad analogies. But what can we possibly do to save ourselves from ourselves? And that's something this is just another battlefront in that ongoing war of the last few decades, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
For me, awesome, George. Appreciate it. For me, kind of to piggyback off of saying what George was just saying is that, a lot of this stuff is also, to me, not just self-explanatory, but also your own self-preservation and also your own, what you feel is worth it, because a lot of people are now, up in arms today, but, I didn't see any less friends on my Facebook page, after all this stuff came down. If anything, I saw more people trying to connect with me. So, I'm just a big believer in theoretically, I think the concerns are more than validated. Literally, I think most people are just like, oh well, I don't give a damn, and they're just complaining to be complaining, because there was no drop at your Instagram, in Facebook. Shit, if anything, you know who have more power to stop people is when Kylie Jenner say something about Snapchat, and then people will jump off that and their shares go down. But the reality, and that's an actual fact, by the way. But the reality is this: is that I think people need to be very vigilant in what they're doing. They need to be very understanding in that everything we're doing is being monitored for a number of reasons. Some legitimate, some not so legitimate. I mean, obviously the threats of terrorism and stuff like that is always prominent. But also too with the Black Panther movie, the insane thought that it's too successful and that it's hurt other quote unquote predominantly white movies is not a concern of Black Panther or its fans or the movement. So to that, I say that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
There you have it. That's how it is. So, welcome to Geek Chic. If you haven't been here before, you got some of it today, and join us next time for the exciting new episode of Geek Chic. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.
Deuces. And Wakanda forever, baby.
Wakanda forever.